Hello and welcome back to another Advancing Spark. So this week we're doing something slightly different and we're digging into Autoloader. So it's a feature that came out quite a few months ago now, which is all about how do you make ETL just work automatically. Kind of makes sense. And it's something that lots of people have tried to do in the past, lots of people have got different implementations of. We've seen versions of it in Azure before, but this is a Spark-specific event-driven loader that will get files from blob storage from a lake directly into a Delta table without you having to do anything, which is all kinds of awesome. So don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, but otherwise let's get stuck in. Okay, so first things first, a little bit about what it's actually doing under the hood. So it's all about loading files. So I've got some kind of storage container. So I've got a storage account, I've got a container set up. This is where I'm going to be dropping files in. And we build a few things off there. So a while back, Azure put a thing called Event Grid in. Now, this is a whole mesh of different event watchers that sit on basically all different Azure resources. So anytime you're seeing audit logs, anytime you're seeing a little history of events, a lot of the time these days that's based on Event Grid, which is kicking out an event. So events that we have when we're talking about storage, blob created, blob updated, blob deleted, we can actually see a little stream of events when this stuff happens. So if we were trying to do a file watcher, we'd need an event grid topic. That is a file watcher that's sitting there on that blob storage associated to that container going, I'm going to pump out a message every time there's a change to a blob in here. That's good. And then we build subscribers. You know, it is kind of that pub sub kind of thing. I have a topic, multiple subscribers can go to it. So I could build this whole thing for Databricks, but actually have a load of other things going off it that are also consuming the same subscription. And then I need to put it somewhere. So I'll build a separate storage account that'll have a queue in there. Again, if you're not familiar with Azure storage, you have several different types of storage. You can have just containers for block blobs, aka files. You can have tables if I want key value pairs. You can have queues if I want something that is doing my kind of messages, queue-based kind of things. Okay, so we're looking there to drop a CSV in. That CSV will actually trigger that event, so the topic will then publish out to its subscribers going, hey, we've had a new event, here's the message. That'll land that into our queue, and we'll see a new little record going, I've got a file added, it's this location, all that details. Now that is all right. Now, that kind of whole event grid topic subscribers stuff, it's fairly easy to set up, but it's kind of out of the realms of a lot of data folk. You don't get people who are writing Spark job going, oh, I'll just set up a load of event grid watchers in my Azure subscription. There tends to be very different teams who look after that kind of thing. So people don't tend to do this stuff that often just because it's a little bit out of their realms of expertise. So the whole point of Autoloader is to try and do this automatically. So we're going to get inside Databricks, and Autoloader is a Databricks bit of functionality. It's not vanilla Spark. We're going to build a data frame that's looking at that container. And we're still reading the data from our original blob container. That is our source. We which want to read the CSVs, go, tell me what's in there. But we can also write this down to a Delta table based on a thing called cloud files. So there's a different type of file format in a data frame saying this is based on a file watcher. This is an event-driven streaming style job that's going to go and read from my blob store. And then because we're writing to Delta, we can be writing into it in a streaming fashion as well. So that's kind of what Autoloader is. Autoloader is this kind of file-based, so it's kind of a chunky batch style loading that'll trigger immediately as soon as the file lands inside blob storage and then land it into somewhere else. Using Spark structured streaming, so we could be going into a Delta lake, we could be going somewhere else. And Autoloader takes care of the build of those awkward bits. Now, actually, I'm talking about Azure. There is a version of Autoloader in AWS that works differently. Kind of does the same thing, but obviously it's got different tools, different components that it has to stitch together to get this working. And again, you can build this manually. So you can get Autoloader and say, don't bother building my event grid, the topics, the subscriptions. Here's a queue. Here's your source. Just use that queue to read that source. And if you want to go and build the rest of that stuff manually, you can. Okay, so that's what we're trying to build. So we're going to try and get that working. So let's go and have a look. Okay, so over in Databricks land, a few things. And actually, let's go back to the portal and have a look what's set up. So I've got a storage account. So I've got my AutoSpark storage account. So that's brand new, just set up. Containers, I've created one called landing, and there's nothing in there. That's the thing I'm going to put this watcher on. That's where I want to be landing files and having things happen from. I can go into events. Now, this is where you would normally see these event grid subscribers, topics, all that kind of stuff. I've not set anything up. So if I wanted to do this manually, I could give it, my new sub, and give it a topic name. I can choose the type of event, so you can see these are the ones that the blob store can do automatically. So I can have things triggered based on it. So again, autoloader is all going to be about your blob created doing that triggering. But we're not going to do that manually. We want autoloader to do that for us. That's the whole point. Now, I do have a service principal set up. So I've gone into Active Directory, I've set a service principal up, I've given it access into this one storage account. I'm not going to do everything in here. So I could have this as my container and have an entirely separate storage account for my queues. Out of sheer laziness, I'm just going to do it in the same place. So I'm going to have this container drop files in, and then a separate queue in the same storage account will start getting records, and I can just do everything in one place, and that makes security a little bit easier for me. Okay, so that is my plan, and I've basically sort of written out some of the code that I need, and we can step through and get that working. Okay, so I've got my cluster running, I've got a few things. So firstly, I'm telling it the schema. So I'm pretending I've got a metadata database somewhere and I'm pulling back the schema. It's going to be CSV. I'm just cheating it and telling it what to expect. So I need to tell it how to connect to blob store, because I'm going to use that as my source. I'm going to do some connections to it. So I need to go and actually grab that. So I just need, in this case, a key. I'm going to grab my access key. I'm going to pop that in. So that's going to go in there. I need to tell it what the account name is. The account name is AutoSpark. So that can go, pop it in there. Okay, so that's just telling it, if I try and do any connections to AutoSpark blob.core, here's the key to use. I wouldn't necessarily want to use the full key every time I'm connecting, but simplicity, right? There's quite a few moving parts here. Next thing, so I had a few errors when I was first trying to do this, because I was trying to stream into tables that didn't exist yet, and it was just not very happy with me. So as a quick thing to get it working, I was saying, well, let's get rid of any of this cloud file nonsense. Let's just do a straight read, going read my CSVs from that container, and then just write it out to a new Delta table. So real simple, if there's anything there, write it into a new table, will be grand. Okay, so I need to finish writing that. So that was landing, and that's going to be AutoSpark. Checking still there, yeah. And then I've already mounted a lake. So I'm just going to write it to my existing lake in this new AutoStream folder. Okay, so no data in there. That might get a little bit confused. So I'm going to pop a little file in there just to get things started. So let's do an upload. We're going to be going back and forth to this upload. I've basically just grabbed an existing fact and said, just chunk it up into a load of bits. So we've got a load of small files, throw that data up. That's going to upload, and then we can run our initialization, and then we'll just have a normal Delta table. Nothing special there, no autoloader. That is literally just exactly what we normally do. And it thinks about things and it does some stuff. Okay, we'll come back to that in a sec. Next thing I need, so when I'm using autoloader, it needs access to that queue. It needs to know how to get into that list of the events that have happened. And it does that using a SAS key. So that is a shared access signature key. Again, my file's uploaded, that's good. So on my actual container, I can go in here. I can go into shared access signature. I say I need a new shared access signature. And I just need it to be queue-based. So I'm going to say it's only a queue. It should be everything. Go and do that. And then I can generate a key. And this is essentially, if you're trying to integrate with an application and things, and you don't want to give it access to your whole blob, you want to kind of limit what it can see. You want to have kind of just carve up your blob into some rudimentary security model. You can use SAS keys to do that. So in this case, I've been fairly blunt and just said you can have everything. So I've got my connection string, and that's what needs to go in as my SAS key. Again, normally I'd be using Databricks secrets for this. I'd have it registered through the CLI, and I'd just be pulling it back and not exposing it in my code, but showing you guys what's actually happening. Okay, now that the file's uploaded, I'm going to kick off my read, make sure that's happy. So it's going to go through, it's pulled back the schema, it's reading that out, it's creating this new Delta table. That'll be happy. And then I can have that SAS key shared as my variable ready to go. Okay, we're getting there. Okay, so next, I have a load of settings that I need. So it's this, because this whole autoloader thing needs access to create Azure objects on my behalf, it needs a load of information. So I've got this cloud file configuration object. And I'm putting a few things in. So subscription ID, my tenant, my client ID, my secret, lots of sensitive information. Going to have to delete that service principal when we're done. And I need to tell it which resource group I'm going to be working on. So there's a load of info that it needs to know how does it go and create those Azure resources. So again, if your service principal is not set up properly, if your service principal doesn't have the right level of access, you're going to have a bad time. This stuff's not going to work. I found it a little bit clunky when I was setting it up, and I'd hit go. It would think about it for a few minutes and then go, I don't have access. Or rather, it would just go, I failed. And by digging through audit logs in the Azure portal, I found out, oh, it didn't have access. That thing didn't exist already. So your kind of error logging isn't the most expressive. Okay, I'm passing in that connection string. So my SAS key up here, I'm passing that in as my Cloud Files connection string. That is to the queue that it needs. And I'm telling it it's a CSV file, so nothing special there. Okay, just make sure I've run that. Grab that, and then I've got a data frame. So I'm saying data frame spark.readstream. Again, this is a streaming format of Cloud Files. And that feels a bit weird because I'm like, no, it's a CSV. But actually, the Cloud Files knows it's a CSV. There's this like sub-format, but it's the rest of the Cloud Files is saying this is an autoloader. This is working based on that event trigger. Okay, so I've got a format of Cloud Files, passing my options in. So I'm saying take this config, pass it into my options parameter, take my schema that I've already defined, and then load it into my blob. So then I need to tell it this is going into landing and it's going into auto spark. Okay, so hopefully that's good. Yeah, happy. It's not doing any checks there, it's just got a data frame. And then I can write a stream. So I'm saying take my data frame, write it as a stream in Delta format, and I need to give it a checkpoint location. So this is so it knows what it's already done. So generally, if you're doing structured streaming, having a checkpoint location just gives you a load more functionality. Generally a good thing to do. So I'm saying there's a place in the lake where you should go and log what you're doing, and then I can do start. So I can start that stream off, I can start that actually working. Okay, so that's going to initialize. So when I was having errors here, when I didn't have the right security set up, it would sit at initializing for a moment and then just go, no. So we'll know it's working if we get to a point when it's actually sort of turned on and running. And we'll get the normal kind of stream diagnostic stuff. So we can see row throughput and all of that kind of stuff that you get with Spark streaming. Okay, so let's give that a minute. And then when that's running, we can go and drop a file in. Okay, there we go. So we have a running auto-loading stream. Again, this is file-based, so it's not going to insert row by row. It's going to get a chunky load that file. So we can go and do an upload. Let's go back into our blob store, to my container. I can say, okay, on the next one loaded, grab a file. There we go. Okay, so what we're wanting to happen is we'll see this go in. We'll then be able to go and have a look at our queue, and we'll see there's an event in our queue, and we'll have a look and we should see that get picked up automatically in our stream. So if we go over to our queue first, so because it's the same storage account when I have my queue, I can look in queues in that same place, and I see Databricks has automatically created a queue for me. Again, that's the autoload. The service principal's gone off and done that for me. So that's now worked, we can see. So we should actually see a message in the queue in a second. And then we'll actually see that we've got something happening. Going through, good. And then we'll be able to see that we've actually got an event happening. Let's give that a second. Oh, there we go. So we can see that we've had a batch. So that's gone through, it's created that for us. We've seen a sudden spike in the amount of rows processing, and that's actually going through nicely. And what we can actually do, yeah, we can just do a quick do a count of this records to see how many records we've gone. Then we can drop a new file in and make sure that's going into my Delta table. Confused why I'm not seeing anything in my queue. I normally should. I don't know if there's a refresh issue there. That seems very weird. But the queue's actually working because I can actually see it coming in. So I've got, I've got just over 1 million rows sitting currently in there. So if we go and upload a new file, we should then be able to query that and make sure that goes straight in, which is kind of great because normally, we have this whole batch process of every so often, poll blob, if there's anything that we can determine is new, run a job, pass that as a parameter into my thing. Basically, I'm constantly juggling parameters saying what has and hasn't been loaded. And this is basically just taking it off me. It's saying, look, we'll look after what's been loaded. We'll tell you what files have gone in there before, and we'll just take care of bringing new files in. Don't you worry about it. That's kind of what Autoloader is doing for us. So we'll give that a minute, see if that goes through. We should be able to see in events, we'll have a topic. Okay, so we've now got an event subscription. So we can see that Databricks went through, it used that service principal, and it created a subscription for me that's going off, that's writing things into a queue. Again, so it's created all these objects. It's just normal, straightforward objects that you use in Azure. It's not doing any fancy new event thing that it's built. It's just plugging in to existing components. So if you have a load of logging that you currently do via Event Grid, you can trigger it on the same queues. Okay, there we go. So I've got my second spike. So it's picked up that next file. I can go and I can run that. And I should see even more. Yeah, okay, so it's now 1.7. Great. Okay, so that's Autoloader in a nutshell, is going through and running things. And if it sees any files in there, it'll just suck it up. But for me, that's not particularly good. So yeah, great that it creates the components for me. But I don't want to leave a streaming job running. Because generally, most of the ways that we work with like some big ETL engineering jobs is that we can turn on cluster off. We can have it scaled down. And then we know there's some work to do. So we turn everything back on, do the work, turn it off again. And if we've got a streaming job running, that means that it constantly has a trigger. It constantly has a keep alive signal sent. So my cluster never auto terminates. So the fact that it's running as this perma stream job, even though it's only loading batch data when it actually sees it needs to come in, that has some limitations too. However, there is a way around it. So if I just cancel that, get rid of that job, so I'm going to stop streaming. Now that's going to stop my reading of that queue. That doesn't stop the event watcher. I can be adding new files and I'll still be kind of adding those into my queue and kind of building those things up. Actually, let's go do that because it takes a little while. So we can go in here, we can add some new files. I'm going to add two at once, go crazy. I don't know what to do. Let's do 4 and 5. Add them in, hit an upload. That's going to go in. And I'm currently stopped. I'm not watching that queue. But what I do have is got a different way of doing things. I can pass in this trigger once parameter. And that just means I'm going to run it. It's going to check that queue. It's going to use its checkpoint. And it's going to say, tell me any files I've not processed yet and get those done. So I can just run this ad hoc whenever I want. And it'll just pick up any files that have landed since I last ran it. So I can still do like a nightly ETL. And it'll just scoop up any files that happen to have landed during the day, which is just takes that whole managing upload, managing files just out of my hands. I don't have to do that. I can just run this trigger once and it goes through quite happily. Give it a sec, are they still going? There we go, one's up. Still very confused why we're not seeing anything in that queue. Again, it's all fine yesterday. So there we go, I've got now some records coming through, so it's being a little weird. Okay, so I can see that there's are things coming through. You see those build up, and then we can work with it. Maybe it's because I obviously wasn't reading the queue and so it was marking them as done. Okay, so I can go in here. I should be expecting it to run 2 lots of files. So if I run my trigger once, it goes off. It does initialize the stream. It'll do any work it needs to do, and then it'll close that stream down. So it's not keeping the cluster alive. It's not going to be this ongoing forever job. It's just going to run, find out what it needs to do, and then stop. So that's now a finished job. And if I go back up to my check, I can go and say it has that actually got data. It's now on 2.9 million. So that's gone straight into my Delta table. So if you're building that kind of early, just ingest things into a coherent, standardized layer into Delta, which has a load of functionality and advantages anyway, then you can just have it automatically sucking in. Now, I need to do a little bit more experimentation and see just how rich we can get that data frame, because there are some limitations of what you can do with streaming data frames compared to standard batch data frames, like how many things you can join together and the cadence and pace of stuff. But generally, the kind of things that we're doing when we take data that we've just seen and we landed it into a standardized zone is all within that file. It's cleanse it, make sure the structure's right, chuck out any dodgy rows, it's add lineage columns, and all that is absolutely fine. So we can have the exact same process that a lot of people still use of every hour, every day, whatever your cadence is, turn the cluster on, run all of your trigger once updates using Autoloader, just suck in the files that happen to have changed, and then close the cluster down. And that has a ton of benefits. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So that is Autoloader in a nutshell. And there's a load of stuff in there. And again, security, making sure that service principal has the right level of access, making sure that your Azure subscription is actually enabled for some of this stuff. If you haven't enabled the event grid resource provider, it's not going to work. So there's a little bit of setup to make sure you can use event grid, that you have a service principal that has the right level of access, that you have a storage account that is set up. In my experience, I had to set up that Delta table I'm streaming into in advance. If I was just doing a read, so I had kind of a quick one when I was just saying, just display, just show me the results coming in. That had an error after the first batch, just because it was trying to write into a temporary Delta table that didn't exist. So yeah, one or two little bits of flakiness, but when you've got it set up, when it's actually working, it's really cool. So yeah, that's what I wanted to go through today. So that is Autoloader in a nutshell. And let me know if you think it's good. Let me know if you want to use it. Let me know if that's going to change how you do ETL currently. Just write down in the comments and just tell us what you think. Otherwise, don't forget to like and subscribe, and there'll be some more videos for you to check out. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Cheers.